Hello, so B2 Chapter 3 competition adaptation, the last of the topics for the Year 8 test coming up in a couple of weeks. So you've got your revision guides and notes from lessons, your Caboodle login, Sam Learning, BBC Bite Size. Just Google BBC Bite Size Key Stage 3 Science and you'll get extra notes on this. So this is just a brief run through, obviously more work for you to do by yourself to get ready for the test. So competition adaptation, describing the resources that animals and plants will compete for. Well, these are resources which allow them to um, survive and also to reproduce, which is ultimately the whole point of them surviving, is to have offspring and pass on their genes. So if you've got animals, the main ones that they're competing for is your food, water, mates, so they can reproduce, reproduction, and space. And shelters in there as well. Plants, well, obviously they make their own food via photosynthesis, of which they require light and water to do that. They again need space, and in addition to that they'll need minerals from the soil to allow them to produce all the proteins and fats and things like that so they can grow. So there are the resources. Looking a little bit at the adaptations, well, basically an adaptation is something that has happened, or some way that the organism has evolved over time to allow them to compete well or to survive in a particular environment. So the example here we have is a cheetah. Cheetah is obviously a carnivore and it's going to be hunting other organisms, and it's very fast. So adaptations will help organisms to compete. So cheetah, very fast, allows it to catch its prey. The cactus is a good example. It's got very small leaves. In fact, its leaves have become quite spine-like, so that prevents it from being eaten by other organisms. It's got these very thick stems which can hold lots of water to allow it to remain in very arid environments, very dry environments. It'll have very large root systems that will allow it to extract water from over a large area. And then you've got the oryx here. This is a good example of a well-adapted creature. It lives in desert-like conditions, very dry conditions. So it's nocturnal, it moves around at night. So that reduces its energy expenditure. It doesn't need to cool itself down as much. It generally doesn't sweat, so it doesn't lose water through that way. It's got very large feet as well to help move on the sand. So lots of different adaptations for this particular creature, which allows it to survive in an area which would be harder for other creatures of its size. So define the term adaptation, so we did that in the previous slide. Adaptations will help organisms to compete. So we could perhaps go just a little bit further and say adaptations are particular characteristics that allow an organism to compete effectively in an environment. Okay, so we've got another example here. We've got deciduous trees. I'm not quite sure which one this is. My biologist friends will be able to help me out here. But these ones are the ones that grow the leaves in the spring. So when it's nice and warm and wet, they start to grow their leaves, allows them to capture the sunlight and undergo the photosynthesis so they can grow. So they grow quickly in the spring. In the summer, carries on lots of leaves, producing their fruits, producing their pollen and seeds. As the autumn comes around, the sunlight, there's less sunlight. It's no longer energy efficient to keep all these leaves growing, so they die off and they fall down, and then the leaves have an advantage even then because they will surround the area, keep that insulated, keep that warm over the winter months, and also the nutrients in the leaves, as that decays into the soil, they can be reabsorbed back into the plant. So a good bit of recycling there. And in the winter, they obviously don't have the leaves on the tree anymore. This would be the snowshoe hare. It's got very large feet, as you can see here, just like snowshoes. So the snowshoe hare, and it's adapted over time. During the winter, it has a nice white coat, so it's camouflages itself against the white snow, and in the summer months when the snow's on around, its fur turns this brown colour, so it can blend in with its surroundings, which is obviously the mud and the stones. So it's well adapted to its environment. It changes over time, and the reason for this is obviously this is a prey here, and the lynx would be one of its predators. And if they happen to be in an environment where the only thing that the lynx is eating is the hare, then you'll get this interdependence. Whereby the population of both depends on the other population of the other. So here we've got the prey, so this is the hare, and this would be the lynx. So if we start here, we can see that the prey's population is dropping quite quickly, and the prey's population is increasing. So obviously the prey is dropping and the predator is increasing, sorry. So the predator is becoming very efficient at catching the hare, and so it's killing off lots of the prey. So the prey population drops to a very low level. At this point, because there are so few of the prey left, the predator, the lynx in this case, its offspring can't survive particularly well, so its population starts to drop because there's not enough food around for it. As the population drops below a particular level, the prey has got the opportunity to start breeding in larger numbers again, or more importantly, the numbers survive for longer, so the prey population shoots up very quickly, and then as the prey population increases, there's more food available, and so the predator's offspring are more likely to survive. And then again it reaches a peak here, where at this point there's a lot of the prey around, and the predator is now available. There's lots of predator around, so they start eating a lot of the prey, so it drops again very quickly, and then we get this cycling effect. Prey population increases very quickly, followed by the predator afterwards, then the prey drops, then the predator drops, and it goes around in cycles. So to define the terms variation, species and breed. So variation so that would just be differences in characteristics within a population. Characteristics within a population. So that could be height, weight, hair color, blood type, ear length, for example, lots of different things. So species. So species would be organisms that can reproduce to produce fertile offspring. Okay, and this is a particularly important definition of the species. So, for example, if two horses were to reproduce with each other, they reproduce another horse, so they'd be members of the same species. If you take a donkey and a donkey, and they reproduce, you get a donkey. But if you take a horse and a donkey, you produce a mule. And while it does produce a mule, the mule itself is sterile. It can't produce any further offspring. So these two, therefore, by definitions, are not part of the same species. A breed is a subset of a species. With particular characteristics or defined characteristics. Okay, so dog breeds are one of the most obvious examples. You've got all these different types of dog, all these different breeds, Dalmatian here, Greyhound, Great Danes, and the like, but they can all breed with each other and produce fertile offspring, so they're all part of the same species, but they are different breeds. So we've got two main types of variation, as it says here. Describe and explain the difference between environmental and inherited variation. Inherited variation is variation that comes passed down from you from your parents. So characteristics passed down from parents via genetic material. We'll come on to that in a sec. Whereas your environmental variation is caused by surroundings and what you do, really. So the earlobe is the classic example. You either got a lobe on your ear, it's loose flap of skin at the bottom, or you don't, and that is inherited. So your genes, your genetic material define what type of ear you have. Environmental variation, one's caused just by the environment. So language might be an example, because that only comes from how you speak, where you grow up, whereas a lot of the variations characteristics can be both environmental and inherited. So hair color is a classic example. You will have inherited a particular hair color from your parents, but then you can dye your hair and change it, so they can be both inherited and environmental. We can define variation in two other ways, as a continuous or a discontinuous variation. So another inherited characteristic would be blood type. So the major types are type O, type A, type B, or type AB. And these would be discontinuous because they have fixed values and only certain values are possible. And when we have this and we plot this kind of data, then we plot it as a bar chart. So frequency up the side, the variation along the bottom, and then we have gaps between the bars. If we have continuous data where it can take any value, then we plot normally as a histogram. So we have bars with ranges underneath, so 130 to 134, and then 135 to 139, etc., etc. So our variable here is height category, and then number of people or frequency again here. So you draw the bars, and you can also draw this curve through it